Hey, this is Dave Colella from Piper and the Hard Times. You are listening to the Drums and Rums podcast with Paul Robertson.
Hey all, it's Paul from Drums and Rums with the Backbeats Meets the Spirits. Our guest is the drummer from the band Piper and the Hard Times, who are the 2024 International Blues Band winners. So I caught them while we were in Memphis there on our trip up with good friend Kevin McLaughlin and his band, and we saw these guys. We're like, holy shit, these guys are going to win it all, right? So we're going to talk with the drummer for the Piper and Hard Times, Dave Colella. As I said it right?
Yeah, just like my buddy's sister used to do. That's right.
So how you doing, Dave?
Man, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for
So
having me.
yeah, again, congratulations on on winning the IBC. And for those that aren't familiar with the International Blues Challenge, it's I think it was the 39th year, right? Something
Something like
like
that.
that. It's
Yeah,
been doing it for a
38 or
long time.
39. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yep.
and so the blues
Well, thank
organization
you.
in
Yeah, thank you.
Memphis. Yeah. So that's, I mean, again, there was, and that's something that Kevin and we've talked, now that we're back home, during that week there in Memphis a couple weeks ago, and it was just wow, the talent, the artist. It was just awesome. It was like, I know you're from Nashville, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but it was very cool to be in one place, seeing all these great musicians and just hanging out, camaraderie, and so forth. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah, I
mean,
have to agree. It was a good spirit there that week for sure.
yeah, even though it was freaking cold. Okay, let's just address that, right?
Yeah, it was insanely cold. And I think the day before we left, I saw a clip somebody sent me or I happened online or something. Somebody was skiing down Beale Street. So that was we knew it was going to be an interesting event this year if you're skiing down Beale Street. That's just, I don't know.
Right, yeah, I didn't see the video, but I would believe it because the roads didn't seem like by the time we all got into town, the roads were not all week long. It pretty much seemed like all the local roads were never really cleared out really proper. But anyways,
No. I mean, it's a mess here in Tennessee when it snows. I mean, probably out. I'm guessing out in East Tennessee, they probably handle it a little better. Maybe I'm not sure, but Nashville, 40 to Memphis, all that. Like, no, it's just everybody pretty much stays home, or if you got to go out, you do so at your own risk. That's how it works here.
I was glad to be back in Florida. That's all I'm going to say. So
Yeah, I bet.
never got above freezing. So, but yeah, I was such again a pleasure to have been able to attend the IBC competition this year. Just being in Memphis, when Kevin was going to go to talk about going, I said, yeah, I've never been. I want to check it out. And there's a lot of history, a lot of music.
Yeah,
Obviously, we,
yeah.
we went to Sun Studios. We didn't get a chance to make it to Graceland, but so I'm like, all right, well, we got to come back now. So, and like I said, for you guys, you weren't too far to travel, but still, it was probably a challenge, just even traveling to get to Memphis from
No,
Nashville.
yeah, I mean, it was a little dicey, but 40 was good. It was, once you got off, if you need gas or, the side roads and the exits were a mess. But to your larger point, we were very fortunate, just, locale wise being, three and a half hours up the road, as opposed to, like y'all coming from
16.
Florida. Yeah, there was a great bunch of guys that came from Italy, and there was a band from France, and obviously people from all points in the states. So we were just very lucky to be up the road, so that made it easy for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there's a couple bands that had some issues with equipment or making it was a challenge, and it was yeah. Somebody had said they don't call it the International Blues Challenge. They take the word challenge lightly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a huge undertaking. I mean, the fact that they do that every year with a band side of things and then a solo duo side of things, it's an extraordinary amount of acts and venues to coordinate, and they make it go. It works. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we counted 136 acts, not including the youth Some of the
Okay.
youth that
You guys
performed.
got the tally. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, and the youth thing is super cool too. We had some people from town here that we saw play there, and then they came in, and a couple of those guys guested and sat in with us on our last local gig once we got back to town.
cool.
And I love that they're doing, that whole youth side of things and developing, the art form and the players and the next generation. It's really cool. I love seeing that.
Yeah, it's a great way to be very inclusive to kind of make sure that it's nurturing the blues
Yes.
next generation and
Yes.
and some of the clinics or things that they are able to kind of musicians or the younger musicians to I think there was a uh it wasn't a speed dating, but it was something similar to that. I know Kevin attended on.
Yeah, there was a biz event, and then you mentioned the clinic, and we had met Tony Braunagel, the great drummer producer, who was there in a couple capacities. I think he was solo duo judge on Saturday, but then he also was doing clinics, and so we met him on, I can't remember the first night or second night, and then he mentioned his youth clinic that he was doing the next day. So a couple of the folks from our camp went down there and hung and watched Tony do his youth clinic. And I'm kind of a geek for that sort of stuff, like drum clinics and especially for the kids, because I do teach privately and I've done that on and off for a long time, and I like teaching kids in particular. So it was fun watching someone like Tony do his thing and just kind of turning on the next generation of drummers.
It's very cool. So yeah, so let's kind of let's back up the train here and like we're talking a little bit
Okay.
about it. Your is yeah, I mean, I guess how did you get into music? I know you already talked about being in from New Jersey originally, which I am as well.
Oh,
We're close
whereabouts?
Middlesex County, so
Okay, Southern Jersey,
yeah, I don't know. Everyone says that if you're from
right?
the north, it's always I have never idea anymore where exactly Middlesex County is comparison to north or south. Yeah, somebody from the south, they'll say, "Oh, North Jersey." I'm like, "Well, no, to
Right.
me,
I guess that I guess depending which side of things you're on. Yeah, I'm from Somerset County, which is like Morristown, Somerville area.
Mhm.
Basically
Yep.
straight west of Manhattan. If you just drove out of the city west, for a ways, 30 minutes or so. That's
Okay.
where I grew up.
Yeah, so I grew up in Sayreville. So I mean, you know what Sayreville is, obviously,
Oh,
who's
oh,
from
okay.
there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know Sayreville. Yeah. I
Yeah.
I guess that's not really South Jersey, is it? I know exactly
No.
where you
Yeah.
were. Right
Yeah,
on.
because I don't think Somerset's that far. Because I used to play
No, no,
youth,
it's not.
yeah, travel
It,
soccer, and I know we used to go up to
yeah,
Somerset a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. No,
Cool.
Sayreville was not far at all.
Yeah. So okay. So growing up in Jersey, right? Obviously, that time frame and the scene mostly is probably in Jersey is rock music, heavy metal, and things like that. But you kind of the band that you were in Jersey was that a country band? Is that how I read in the bio there? Or
Not exactly. No, it was, I guess, what you now would call an Americana band, I suppose. That band was sort of infamously uh, too country for New York in the early '90s, and so when we came down to Nashville in '94, '95, and then we were too rock for Nashville. So we were sort of in this crack. It was rootsy music with a lot of vocal harmony and emphasis on songwriting and that kind of stuff. And so we sort of there wasn't a whole lot of obvious parallels for what that band was doing at the time, and as such, we were wildly unsuccessful. That's not entirely true. I'm being kind of funny, but we didn't, we weren't able to push up the road like we had hoped with that thing. But it was a great band and guys I grew up with and very formative, obviously for me.
and did you? I mean, so going from Jersey, like I said, you maybe too country for New York, but was the I guess the goal to say, hey, all right, well, if we're too country for New York, well, we're going to go to where the country mecca is, or Music City.
Yeah,
Um,
kind of. There was a couple of things happening at that time. One was that we were really burnt out on being there, all being from New Jersey and having played that area, through college years and a couple years after. We kind of felt like we were just ready for something different. And at the same time, we were playing in New York a lot, and the Bitter End was our home. And Paul down there and Kenny Gorka was managing at the time. Paul's the current owner. He was manager. Kenny was co-owner, and Kenny in particular was super helpful. He knew more of the biz at that time, and was like, you guys should probably look at Nashville. And he was having us in a lot to play. We were getting producers and label people out, and they were kind of all saying the same thing. They were like, it's really good, but like it's nothing we can do with it. It's not the kind of thing we're doing here. It was like the age of like some of our cohorts were the Blues Travelers, Spin Doctors guys, and we were playing the Village at the same time as those things. We weren't a jam band, and we didn't have any kind of like edgy kind of thing to us. It was just a sort of song oriented, just good vocal band. And so those guys, some of the people in the industry in New York, and Kenny in particular, sort of were pointing us here, like maybe you want to look there, maybe you want to look there. And so we went and visited, and said no way. There's nothing happening there. We're not moving to Nashville. Blah blah blah. And then we went and did another year up there, and then after that year, we started poking around again, and then we just did it, man. I had just recently gotten married, and the whole band moved down here, and most of us have been here ever since.
Mm. So yeah, that's it's definitely sound it's right. You kind of I would almost say that the way you explained it was a timing thing, right? Sometimes bands that are or have got a certain style or thing, and it's just not things aren't ready, But now, if you look back at
Yeah,
like, hey,
I,
you in
I
the
think
same
you're right.
band,
I think you're exactly right. It was a lot of it was a timing thing, and then
yeah,
we did come down here and manage to get introductions and play in front of um, three or four of the big label heads that were here, like the major labels at the time, Capitol and RCA, and played showcases for these guys, and it was the same kind of thing. It was like, yeah, cool band, but pass. I don't know what we would do with this. So
mm.
it just was that's what it was.
And now today, you just kind of you kids can go out there and just go on YouTube, and that's how you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, all things, right? And I mean, there was a variety of ways to do it back then. There were bands that were getting out and just road dogging it and getting in the van and playing the shows for 30 people, and then 80 people, and then 200 people, and building their route and all that. We were trying to do a traditional music biz approach at that time, which was try to secure a record deal. Here out of Nashville, and it just wasn't in the cards for that band.
Mm. Yeah, that's so yeah, like you mentioned, that time frame. I remember, yeah, distinctly that time frame. You mentioned the Spin Doctors and Blues Travelers. They were huge, but they had certain different thing about them. But
Yeah,
yeah, so
and great bands, and great guys. We knew some of them personally to varying degrees, um, and they've all done well.
coming out to into so actually, I mean, how did you get actually into music or into drumming?
Um, Stereotypically, humorously, I was that kid that just wanted to beat on shit. I mean, that was just like I was that kid, and I just loved it. I don't know, I couldn't tell you why. I started third grade, uh, on lessons, because my parents said, okay, well, if you want to play drums, you got to take lessons. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever I got to do. But I was like literally that kid that just like was just into it for whatever reason. There's no drummers in my family, or at least at that time there weren't. I have a cousin who became a drummer as well, but parents, and it wasn't a musical thing in my family. It just kind of popped out.
Right. So that's yeah, it's because growing up, and I think we're roughly probably the same bracket of age range, Gen Xer kind of range, and yeah,
Okay.
again, growing up in Jersey, like I said, the scene was there was very well, even country music back then. country
Yes,
music
you
was so
did.
foreign. If you weren't near
Right,
Nashville or
right.
something,
I know.
yeah,
I always say that all the time because you meet people that grew up in the South or grew up in the Midwest, and they were raised on country music, heard it all the time, and I kind of went to it, the classic country stuff, after the fact later, but I tell people that all the time. It's like we just weren't exposed to it. You know what I
yeah,
mean? I mean, maybe if your parents were into it or if your family was into it, like my wife was aware of a lot more of the classic country artists than I was because her dad was into it.
mm,
But we just didn't hear that stuff, and
right,
people kind of laugh. I'm just like, it just didn't exist in our realm. It wasn't on the radio. It wasn't there.
yep. You're not hearing country on Z100, okay? There's a
Yeah,
flashback for
K
you.
Rock or
Yeah,
WNEW.
so yeah, and it kind of like I had a very similar experience where but yeah, so when I was in Nashville, kind of hit, and again to your point, I didn't know much about Nashville. I'm not normally a country singer, a country music guy. A lot of aware of most of it that's been popularized or made, but never got. And then I went to the Country Music Hall of Fame, and I was like, I would have never thought I would have went to the Country Music Hall of Fame before the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah,
just
yeah,
like there's so much history and things and the connections, and I'm like, this is really cool. So it kind of opened me up a little bit more to, country music and understanding some of that and the relationship and the history and all these things. And I really took that whole weekend. And, again, I'm sure you experience it is just fascinating watching every bar on Broadway. There you go play your 3 hours, take your cymbals, take your pedals and sticks, run down to the next bar to play another 3 hours or so, right? So um but yeah, I mean that's kind of like I said, now it's kind of
yeah.
kind of a little
Yes,
bit what you're doing, right?
some guys are doing that. That's never been something I did with rare exception. Um, that strip down there just wasn't in my uh, Nashville plan or history. I did play down there a bit with a really great guitar player named Leroy Powell some years ago. We had a Thursday gig, and that went on for a time, and it was kind of. I mean, stuff's been kind of ramping up in Nashville, pretty quickly over the last several years, and that was kind of just before things went totally bananas down there. Um, and now it's like that's a whole side of the city that's a certain thing, and and it's for some people and it's not for other people. But there's a whole nother side of the city musically. I mean, there's a lot of sides to the city musically, but you could, and I tell this to people all the time. Sometimes, we have friends, that we know from wherever, or people that I knew from high school, and they want to come to Nashville and visit, and where do I go? What do I do? And it's kind of like, well, what are you in the mood to do? How do you like to spend your time? What kind of environment do you want to be in? Because
Right.
most people at this point, they've heard of Broadway and the scene down there, but there's a whole nother part of the city, both musically and otherwise, that you will completely miss if that is your only
Yeah.
destination and your only understanding of what Nashville is. It's just a part
Right.
of it.
Yeah, I didn't have a car. I mean, I when I arrived, I Ubered everywhere and then bummed a couple
Hmm.
rides in there with the guys that were also attending, and
Yeah.
um, so it was definitely an interesting. You're right. There's a whole lot more. And again, if you don't have the transportation to go out a little bit further and see other things that are outside the craziness, the Nash Bash and all, as you
Yeah,
know, right?
yeah, and you can do it in Uber, but stuff's dotted around and a little spread out, and there's a whole, kind of another scene on the east side, and now pushing up north from there into Madison, where things are starting to pop up now, and it's just being a longtime resident of somewhere, as you probably are in Florida, like you just see this, you get this zoomed out view, and it's things change, places
Right,
change. This is
right.
what happened,
Yeah, there was a couple places I was in, again, not having transportation and trying to figure out how to go over was I know on the other side of the river, like at the end of the Broadway down on the, what the where it meets the river
Right.
was like, hey, there's other places that are there. Is it the Bluebird Cafe? Is that over east?
Bluebird is not over there. Bluebird is south side of town. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
but there are places dotted around the city, in some different places that you would kind of need to know about,
Mhm.
that are out of that, downtown tourist scene.
Cool. Okay. Well, so
Yeah.
I'll definitely travel advisor give you a shout out when next time I'm.
Yeah, please do, please do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Jim's thing was cool. It's like a couple days or a week, or what was that you did
Yeah.
with
So
Riley?
yeah. So with Jim Riley, it was Friday, Saturday, half day, Sunday.
Okay, gotcha.
And there was this particular session. There wasn't. I think it was only like five of us. One, two. Yeah, I think it was
Oh,
five of
nice.
us.
Yeah,
So
intimate.
nice small amount, and and we're in his house. And again, that was the other thing. I'm like again thinking, I'm like, you're touring, you're a musician, you're professional, all these things, and it's like, again, when I grew up in Saraville with John Bon Jovi, it's kind of like the same thing. I'm like, now I've been in John Bon Jovi's house, before they MTV gave it away. I remember that, and
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's right. Yeah, yeah.
so I was, but I mean, and again, so it was just like, am I humble? I mean, to me, it was like, it was a little bit like, this is really, anyway. So, yeah, it was a really cool thing.
Well,
Friday
I think you're
starts.
saying because it was just like kind of normal. You're just like in this guy's house. It was like not what you were expecting, right?
Yeah, right. He's got his
Yeah,
whole basement, his whole studio, and so
yeah.
super cool guy. Again, very knowledgeable, and
That's a
but
very Nashville thing, though. Like just that sort of quaintness and that, like, it's just kind of how it is here. I remember being, kind of taken aback, when if we first moved here with some of the players and the people and the celebrities and the stars that you see that are just doing very normal things, and there's
right.
really no pretense here. It's just kind of like whatever, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I'm sure when you moved to Nashville, it was definitely an adjustment for, culture shock coming from, I mean, again, being around a big, crazy, city in, the Northeast, that it's the speed and pace that moved to Nashville
Yes,
is a totally
yes.
different. It's like,
Yeah, it was
brrr.
yeah, exactly. It was totally different. And it's interesting because what you tend to do is, and I say people tend to do this. I know we did this, and at some point I realized to stop, not do that. You want the new city you're in, the new place you're in, to have all of the things that you miss. You're like, oh, this isn't here, and it's not like this, and it's not like that. But at some point you realize, well, of course not, man, because you're not there anymore. You're here, and so you got to embrace this thing. And there's some things about it that are difficult and frustrating, and the pace was hard to adapt to. But after a while, it was like, oh, this is really good. Like I don't have to kind of be chugging all the time. But that's not what
Yeah.
we do here. Okay, I can deal with that. I like that.
Yeah. Well, hey, especially here in the South, I remember moving down to Florida, and then even now in South Florida, is people talking about, when the first Wawa opened up in Orlando, and it was like, Wawa's here, or there's even a White Castle now in Orlando, and obviously
uh, yeah,
by the
yeah.
attractions, or in Jersey Mike's. It's some of the guys says, because hey man, this new place just opened. I live in West Palm area, and he goes, there's a new sub place, and I was like, oh, what's the name of it? Oh, Jersey Mike's. I go, oh yeah, I've been there. He goes, no, it just opened up like today. I go, no, I've eaten there. And it was like dude, I'm from New Jersey, so it's like
Yeah.
I've eaten in the
Well,
Jersey Mike's.
we went to the original one, Point Pleasant.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, yeah, no, I already know about that place, but
Right,
uh, but
right.
but yeah, and so yeah, kind of in Nashville. So to at the moment, so as teaching is your main thing. So you're not doing as much of the gigging on Broadway though, right? Is that what you said?
Uh, well, I'm definitely not gigging on Broadway, and I never really have. But teaching is not really my main thing. I have my hand in a couple different things, as many of us, creatives and musicians and artists do. I do give lessons. I do gigs, obviously, tours and session work when it comes my way. And then also, my wife and I, for 25 years, have had a little boutique dog product company called Earth
Okay,
Dog. Yeah, and it was something that started quite by accident. And we're a hemp dog product company, and we do collar, leash, and harness, and do wholesale and retail, and have been doing that, like I said, for a long time. So my life is dogs and dog products, and drums and teaching and sessions and gigs.
There
Yeah.
you go. We got your podcast, Dave. It's called Dogs and Drums. There you go.
I'll tell you what, and I did you a great service, or maybe a disservice if you're a dog guy, but I'm hiding out in the drum room downstairs in the basement, and we have a whole bunch of dogs and have had a whole bunch of dogs for a long time, a bunch of rescues, and they are all upstairs. So I can be bark free and yeah, because they pervade everything all the time otherwise, which is great, but
Yeah.
sometimes you just need to like do a thing. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's not your house; it's their house, right?
Well, they bought it, so yes, absolutely.
That's funny. No. Um, so yeah, that's another kind of interesting thing you just said there. It's kind of you got a couple different things going on. That was another thing that struck me about Nashville is just kind of seeing people that are got different irons in the fire, and again, then
Yeah,
little do we
yeah.
know, COVID comes and shuts things down. That if you were a one trick pony, you were kind of really, really screwed because if that one thing was majorly impacted, then you're like, shit, you're not diverse enough in other things and income streams, or especially as
Right,
a musician,
right.
right? Musician, we talk a lot
Yeah,
about that
yeah.
in the podcast over the years. Is COVID happened, it's a virtuous cycle of musicians now can't perform live. If they're full time musicians, bars are closed, right? So obviously, where are you going to play? Most kind of musicians started doing online things to do something. Bars obviously are not serving alcohol, and obviously that's a piece of it. And so like it all affected each other in that kind of that one little microcosm of a micro situation during the COVID. Music and booze do go together, and that's kind of why it's not because of I started the name of the podcast again. It just happened, like I said, it just kind of two things that it rhymed. But the more I kind of talked to musicians over the during the pandemic, it kind of struck me is that yeah, it's right. Now here in Florida, the governor declared that liquor was an essential product, so they made sure the liquor stores were open. Right? You can leave your
Right.
house, you can't go anywhere else, but you can leave your house, go to the liquor store because that's an essential thing. So, so
Yeah, it was a mess. I mean, there's no doubt everything was a huge mess. We never seen anything like it, and hopefully we won't see it again if we're lucky. But I think the thing that most musicians and people that do creative things have on their side is that they're sort of brained that way to be nimble and
mm,
to have their hands in some other things, and in some cases, maybe it's something that was a hobby that you can kind of monetize somehow. Everybody did their best, obviously, but you know excluding the COVID thing, but just in general, I think, to your other point, with your larger point, maybe, is that people that play and write, and those people tend to be creative in other ways. I know loads of musicians and artists that are also painters, visual artists, photographers. It seems to kind of go together, and it doesn't seem strange here in Nashville to be uh, known for maybe a couple things. You know what I
mm,
mean? And people. There's a great bass player I know that met some years ago, and not long after meeting her and her moving up to town, she was producing videos for an artist that we were on a gig together for, and it's like, oh, you know how to do that? Yeah, okay. Some of us are, well, not myself, but are well versed in recording, engineering, live, or doing video production or whatever it may be. I think it just kind of goes hand in hand because we're the kinds of people that you know like to do that sort of stuff and be
yeah,
diverse.
yeah, and that's kind of what again what's really sparked for me was after the lockdown happened, had this idea, a couple of my little music things had kind of just dried up in early 2020, not because of the pandemic. It just kind of it ran its course, I guess.
Yeah, course
And
of
now it's
things.
like,
Yeah,
now what do I do? And then lockdown started happening. It's like, well, shit. I have this outlet that I need, a creative outlet, and that's kind of where this kind of came about. And so
gotcha. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so but yeah, no, that's really cool. So, um, are so when drums, you talked about you being in third grade, getting lessons and so forth. Did you educationally wise continue in the pursuit of music education or drumming? Because you did some training under some pretty big names, right?
Yeah, I was really lucky in a variety of ways through the years, as you well know, and as your audience may or may not know, you know, New Jersey is rich with great talent and musicians, and I mean, how could it not be? Just being on the outside of Manhattan and all that in New York. So when I was young, we're talking grammar school, junior high. I had a great local teacher in my town. His name was Charlie in Bimbo, and he was a phenomenal drummer, and was giving me lessons. If I remember correctly, it was like $6, for like what was supposed to be maybe a half hour, and it was always longer. So I had a really great start, just locally in my town. Um, and then as I got older, I went through another teacher or two. But when I was in college, and I didn't go to music school, I was going to like traditional college at Seton Hall, which wasn't really my bag. But I was still playing with my band, and I was very, very fortunate enough to find Joe Morello, who was teaching in West Orange at Glenn Weber Drum Shop. I think I'm getting that name correctly. And I didn't know he was there. A good friend of mine who I grew up playing with went to William Patterson. He was in the jazz program, and I was looking to take my drum study somewhere else. And he said, "Well, come take a lesson with John Riley. You don't have to be." An enrolled student. John teaches, so I did. I booked a lesson with Riley, and I only saw him the one time because we're doing a get to know you, and he said, "Oh, he assumed I was enrolled at William Patterson, the jazz program." I said, "No, no, I'm actually going to Seton Hall, but like." He's like, "Well, where do you live?" And I said, "Well, I live like 40 minutes from here." And he's like, "Well, dude," he's like, "don't study with me. You should study with Joe Morello." And I was like, "Well, shit, okay, yeah. Where is he?" And he's like, "He's right over in West Orange, at this drum shop." So I was like, my mind was blown. So sure enough, I, called up Joe, and his wife was booking him, and next thing I knew, I was over, studying with Joe, and that went on for several years, couple years, until I moved to Nashville. So that was really, really fortunate. I did a little stuff here and there at Drummers Collective in Manhattan, which you might have remember, and that was a cool place. And they did some summer programs and some private lessons, and I did a little work with Rod Morgenstein there, and a great drummer named Pete Zeldman, and Kim Plainfield, who was there on the staff at the time. And that was a cool little spot, like in like I think it was on 14th Street, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you're right. It's just sometimes it's when you dig into it and from a surface, if you don't know, and then realize like, holy shit, just it's right in the backyard here, and
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
you know,
legends. It was crazy.
yeah, like Pat Petrillo is, he's also a Jersey guy, and
Yeah.
and just yeah,
No, the scene there was something else, man. It's great that you're from there, and so we can relate about that,
oh yeah,
because it was
oh yeah.
it was all things.
Yeah, I know everyone talks about the shore and obviously Stone Pony or Asbury Park or or and
Yeah,
closer to
we
me.
we did yeah, we did a lot of that too, man. The shore clubs, and to varying degrees of success. There was one particular summer where we found ourselves booked in some of those really big, like uh, dance bars down like Long Beach Island. And I don't know why they were booking live bands. They didn't want a live band. They certainly didn't want an original band. So like we got these gigs, and here we were, like this original like roots rock band, and then we would like play our set, and like the dance floor would clear, and people were just like standing there looking at us like, like what are these guys doing? Why are they even here? And then we'd take a break, and the dance music would come on, the floor would pack out, and we were just like, this is not where we need to be.
They're the good old blue boys,
Yeah, it just wasn't working. It's not a match.
Oh yeah, somebody in the booking should be kind of talked to about that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, it's just yeah, just some of that, just growing up there in the area, and then just like I said, we were never exposed to that Northeast was not as obviously as far as away from country music in any way, um, but just never got exposed to it, right? Peripherally you might know some things, right? Some of the names that may
yeah.
even out.
I knew some things. I knew Willie, and I loved
Mhm,
Willie. Um, I was aware of Johnny Cash,
mhm.
and I think Moral
Thank God for
Hazard for
CM
sure.
thank God for CMT, right? CMT and the Dukes of Hazards.
Right. Yeah. The Dukes of Hazard was because you're about my brother's age. Like he was
Mm,
5 years younger, and so he was all about some Dukes of Hazard for sure. But I'll tell you what, when for me, the connection to country music came through the Grateful Dead,
mm.
because my crew and we loved the Grateful Dead. We maybe 15, 16 got turned on to this band, and went all in. And it was at that point that at some point down the road a little bit, I realized, oh, a bunch of these songs that they're playing are old country songs, and that's how I made that connection. So different
Interesting.
back door in, yeah.
Yeah, it's the gateway, right?
There you go. Yeah,
There you
yeah.
go. Too funny. So, yeah, so you're, so your current, as you mentioned, you do a couple different things, but, and some of it is, studio and session work. You know, can you share, like, maybe some of the projects, who you've worked with and some of
Yeah, yeah.
session work?
I mean, I've been doing mostly or completely indie stuff here. There's a rich community of singer-songwriters and folks that are doing things. And so I get called for that kind of stuff sometimes. I have a little circle of people that know me and a couple studios. And producers that will call me for stuff. There's an artist named Mike Thomas who I did 2 records for, and Mike's very talented Americana. I mean, I guess you'd call it country. I think he leans a little more roots rock.
Mm,
But Mike's been working his Spotify thing quite well, and getting a lot of those playlists and done well at promoting and getting his stuff out there. Um, and just a little this and that. Mostly what I'm doing is playing live though, so
mm,
the studio work to the live playing, it's definitely weighted heavier on playing out,
mm,
and locally, short tours. I was in Europe for 2 weeks with a great artist named David
mm.
Newbold, who's a Canadian that's been here in the States for a long time. And that's been one of my main gigs for the past several years. And so it's a little of this, a little of that. Sometimes it's a session, sometimes it's a local gig, sometimes we're hitting a couple days, a little quick weekend run with the Piper guys, or whoever. And you know, so people ask me, who do you play with? I mean, now it's a lot of my time's going to be going to Piper in the hard times, obviously, because that thing leveled up. But my answer has always been, for the last several years, whoever's calling.
Right.
And you know and then I did a bunch of work through the years, and still do when she calls, for a great artist named Bonnie Bishop, who's a friend of mine, and she was here in Nashville for a while, and now she's kind of living between Scotland and Texas,
Okay.
sort of back and forth. And some years ago, I was with, I guess maybe the name that some people might recognize the most is Leroy Parnell, who's a
Mhm.
great slide guitar player, singer, songwriter. And I was doing Leroy's gig for a number of years, and then just a whole bunch of random this and that in between. Like I say, whoever's calling.
Right. And it's, back to Jim Riley. That was something that just telling somebody this the other night was, um, Jim talked about, and again, this was 2019. So, geez, I mean, 5 years ago, I think the math is almost 4.5. And he was talking about a thing called air gigs that he does, where it's kind of like a Fiverr, but it's like specifically for music. Where, like say you have your profile, and here's my credentials, and here's my rate. And so if somebody wanted a session drummer, or a drummer say,
Oh
hey,
yeah,
I've something, it's on something similar, and then you just record it at your own studio,
yeah,
send them the track
yeah,
back.
yeah. There's been a lot of that, and certainly there was a lot of people doing it pre-COVID, and there were
Mhm.
even more people that got into it during COVID. And I was not one of those guys. And I had this conversation with a friend of mine who's a great drummer, and we were commiserating on how neither of us are that guy that wants to be the engineer and in our basement and be doing all that and emailing tracks. And I do okay with tech, but I'm not a tech guy. I'm an analog guy, and so I kind of felt like I got to a certain age and a certain point where I was like, you know what? That ain't me. That's not me. I'm not going to be doing tracks in the basement. It's just not my thing. So uh, I've left myself out of that world, but perhaps unwisely, because I know a lot of guys do great doing that. They can send tracks all over the world. They can teach Skype and remotely, but that's just not my jam. Like to teach, I want to be in the room with the students, and that's just how it feels. I'm kind of, I guess, old school and non-adaptive in that way. That's me.
So to make a dog reference here, so you can't teach an old dog new tricks, huh?
Yeah, an old enough dog. I guess I've reached a certain point where I'm like, nah, that ain't happening for me. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's funny you said analog there, and just hit like you said my other podcast, Riffs and Rhythms, there with Kevin. We just had a guest on, local kid who also had participated in the 2019, 20, maybe 2018, 2019 in IBC here, Jake Walden. And, I think he's only 26 now. Right. And he was talking about, he goes, yeah, I'm more of an analog guy. It's kind of funny. Like, you guys are different,
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
generations. Yeah.
there's always a circle, right? I mean, it always
Yeah.
comes back around. So
Yep.
that's interesting. You do have to wonder if, like, and the kids coming up younger than him, are they going to reject so much of the tech that has become the thing now? Are they going to say, no,
Right.
man, this, like, let's get back to just doing stuff
He,
basic? I
he
don't
threw
know.
it in. Yeah, because again, okay, so Jake's took the guitar player, right? And so I was outnumbered last night in taping that episode, right? The drummer and two guitar players. And he was talking about Jimi Hendrix. And again, guys, I know this is a drum podcast, so just stick with me on this little jaunt of talking about stuff, but just bear with me. But Jake was talking about Jimi Hendrix, right? And how people are like, oh, purist, and it's like, this is how Jimmy plays and so forth. And it's like, you know what? Since Jimmy was so experimental and out there, if didn't die, would he have been really dabbling into a lot of this electronic and synth stuff, right? And I'm like, you got to think about it. Say he probably would have, because
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
somebody who was innovative and trying, like Eddie Van Halen. He was out there trying different things that nobody had done before, or took it. And rather than saying, well, we know Jimi Hendrix this is his tone, and this is the sound. And again, but that's just a small piece of, because his life was short, right?
Yeah, yeah, way, way too short. No, I think you make a good point, which, and I don't mean, when I describe myself that way, like, I'm certainly not a purist in any sense.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm all about experimenting, and musically, and going wherever. And I think the people that are really innovative and really um, willing to embrace that technology, whatever it may be, they find ways. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day about AI, and it's the kind of thing where super fresh. Um, God knows where this is going, but the people that embrace it and use it as a tool will find ways to do things that we can't imagine right now, that are
Yep.
cool and useful and valid. It's not just about like a straight, like, rip off. Oh, it's to rip off, it's bullshit or whatever. Well, that's certainly part of it,
Right.
and it
Yeah.
looks that way now. But people will, smart artists and cool creative people will find ways, whatever the medium is, to embrace that and do something with it that will be the next rad thing that nobody's imagined at this point.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, that's just very true. Um, so the drums, right? So your current configuration, you've got a Gretsch kit, and you want to talk a little bit about that, because I know
About
that
the Sure, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And
I
maybe
know
I can.
the
I'm here in the basement on my notebook, and I'll try not to make it like too goofy for the
yeah, no,
viewers here. But
yeah, no, it's all right.
if I go
We'll take
this
our Dram
way,
we'll take our
take a
Dramamine.
little tour. So yeah, I've got the two kits set up down here. This one closest to me is my recording custom that I got at Manny's. You might remember Manny's in Midtown, and then behind it, back there is my Slingerland kit, and that was my first kit. That was a gloss black concert tom kit that at some point I had the bottom um, bearing edges cut and lugs put on, and I rewrapped it in a nice pink salmon glass glitter, so it looks cool. So those two kits stay here for teaching and practicing and stuff, and then the Gretsch kit that you mentioned is like my gigging kit,
Okay.
broadcaster that I picked up. Um, no, it's my new kit, but I've had it a while. It's been a while.
Right. Yeah, I've seen because there's a music shop here in Daytona Beach. So definitely shout out there to Dan at Daytona Beach Music Center, Drum Center.
Right
But
on.
yeah, there's a lot. Seen the Corvado snare, and it's like holy shit. That's got to be an amazing. You know.
Yeah, well, that's the one. I don't know if you're referencing one at the store or the one that you saw me with, but that
Mhm.
the Craviotto was, yeah, that's been my newest acquisition. Very special drum, and it was actually there's a great little story on that drum, which was that a good friend of ours was building drums at Craviotto because they're here in Nashville now. They were in California and they've been here for some time, and my buddy who is Paul as well was building over there, and he and his wife had an ash tree or a couple ash trees maybe, but at least one on their property that was needed to be taken down because these ash trees get these beetles in them. I forget the
Mm.
name of the beetle, but there's a specific beetle that will bore out the center of an ash tree. And if you don't take the tree down, what happens is the tree looks fine, and then one day it falls on your
Mm.
house potentially. So anyway, he had to drop this tree, and he had a section of it that was big enough to make a few shells from, and with the blessing of Steve Maxwell, who owns Craviotto now, he was able to make a few drums, and he made one for me. And so suddenly this incredible, brilliant, beautiful Craviotto fell in my lap thanks to Paul. So, and as obviously as you imagine, it's been my main snare ever since, and occasionally I'll take another one out, just for old time's sake, and I'm like, eh, probably should have brought the Craviotto out because it just sounds killer. It just is amazing.
No, that's an interesting story, right? You saw the from the how it was birth, I guess, if you want to call it
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah,
From this,
local tree.
yeah, they so there's a guy that we had on who's in southern Georgia, very similar. Again, I learned so much, Dave, from my guest, right? And again, I don't know everything, and it's again, it's the whole part of talking to drummers and just talking to people, right? Interesting,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
You can learn something from everyone, and
yeah,
certainly musically too. I learned stuff from kids and from people that wouldn't be considered good drummers, but people do cool shit that you're like, I never would have thought to do that, and it's brilliant.
yeah. I guess I was never exposed to the fact that I've never gone to a drum, manufacturing place that showed that drums were not just drum plies, multiple plies, that stave drums, or and so we had on Michael Outlaw, and he's in southern Georgia, and he makes incredible.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that company. I follow them and have seen those drums. They're beautiful.
Oh yeah. So he does occasionally a drum like a little drum retreat weekend. He started up, and where you can go down there and you make your own drum there at his workshop there, and you go
Oh
through the whole.
really?
Yeah. So
Huh.
yeah, hit me up
That's a great
afterwards if
idea.
yeah, and if
Okay.
you connect. Yeah. So again, he's not too far from you, but I went up to visit him, and one couple summers ago, drove up, and I'm like, dude, he's so yeah. Anyway, so we're getting off track here, but you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, those things are important and give you a, like you said, a connection to an instrument, or that's a real thing for sure.
yeah, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm still working on it. It's added to my many list of many things here.
Yeah, yeah.
So so we've talked about this for the last 50 minutes or so, and then we finally are getting to it here. Obviously, winning the IBC 2024, band winners of the International Blues Challenge in Memphis. But before we get to even to Memphis, you guys, have claimed stake to winning the Nashville regional one, right? So that's I mean that's also Nashville. You went again you live in Nashville, but just bear with me that you conquered Nashville, you conquered Memphis. So that's some pretty big things on the resume there, right?
It's crazy, man. I mean, it was very, very unexpected. And the funny thing about all of this, really, and if any of the guys, in the Piper gang hear this, they'll laugh, because they know I didn't necessarily even want to participate in this
Mm.
thing. Um, and reason being, just for the very simple fact that I was just like, you know what, like I've never thought about music as like contest, like since Battle of the Bands days in high
Mhm.
school. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's what we did, and that was super fun then, obviously. But I get it. Like I would say America, but it's worldwide. It loves American
Yeah.
Idol and The
I,
Voice, and those sorts of things. And obviously, this event is not new, like you said, 38th or 39th year, whatever it is. So I understand that this is just a thing that's done. This is how it is. What happened was, um, a couple people that we know that are in that scene here in town approached us and said, "You guys should do this
mm,
because um, you'll have a good chance of doing well." And we were just last year. We kind of made the decision. Piper, whose name is Al, and Steve, the guitar player, and myself, who were the founding members of this thing, decided that we wanted to push up the road with this act because we were playing a lot, and we've got a bunch of cool music, and this band had a life 20 years ago for a minute, and then it was shelved for many years. So this is like Piper and the Hard Times, round two, which is actually even crazier. So we decided last year that we wanted to. We played a pretty nice festival up in Kentucky, and it went great. And we were like, you know what? Like we could spread this out. Like we don't need to just be doing gigs in town and whatever. Let's try to take this further. So the IBC thing popped up, and those guys convinced me to do it. They were like, man, at some point I relented, and I was like, okay, fine. I said we'll just jump in. And if Nashville had two rounds of elimination because there's so many bands and artists here. So to your point, there was a handful of lot of acts planned, and so we did the first one, and we were the winner. And then there was a second one, and we were the winner. And so suddenly now we were going to Memphis in January. And so I was like, okay, well, we're going to Memphis. And I didn't really have. I mean, I know it sounds like cliche and stupid. I didn't really give it all that much thought about like what it was going to be, what would happen, what could happen. We went in there just hoping to like maybe find a booking agent, maybe
get something
meet
out of
some.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
get something out of it, exactly. And I will say, I should shout this out for anybody that might hear it. The new Nashville chapter is called the Blues and Roots Alliance. Wonderful people, and Tommy Norman, who was our point guy and running the show over there, was really fabulous. And he shepherded us and this band, the Deltas, who was the duo band, and there was a youth artist, Kelsey, uh, really expertly and super super pro. They did a bunch of fundraising that helped take care of a lot of the expenses, and so it was really really done well from the local chapter standpoint, and we appreciated that enormously. So they made it easy, and we went out, and the band plays a lot, like we gig a lot, and so there wasn't much to think about. It was like show up and play, see what happens. And it happened for us. There was loads of great talent. It's not because we were so genius or anything. There was lots of great bands and artists and singers and duos and all that. And the judges just happened to like particularly well what we were doing. And so before you knew it, long day Saturday, and we won. That was it.
That was a long day. That was a long day, and like I said, we've talked about it on the other podcast, Riffs and
Have you?
Rhythms. As
Yeah, yeah. It was a long day.
you and I, that was a long day. Oh, and by the way, we had to go outside and use the urinals because the water pipes were
Yeah.
no
Oh God, it
water.
was crazy. I will say, thank God there was a restroom in the green room in the back of the theater. But yeah, for those listening, the pipes had frozen in Memphis, and much of the city was on a boil advisory. and the theater didn't have enough water pressure to use their bathrooms. They had, as you probably heard, a sold out Justin Timberlake concert there the night
Mm.
before as like a special event, a fans event or something. Sold out, no restrooms, and then we were talking what maybe high at 25 that day or something. So
Yeah,
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 it was some interesting conditions, you know.
yeah. We were joking about the fact that we were in the urinals and it was like, this steam bath that I'm getting from my urine is not cool.
Oh yeah, no,
He said, you didn't have to experience it because they took care of the
no.
artist, right? Which I guess is
Well,
that's a plus.
I was pleasantly shocked. Like I was just like, okay, this is what it is. And then suddenly somebody popped out of a door. There was a very large green room in the back of the theater, and I stuck my head in there, and I was like, holy shit, there's a working bathroom back here. Yes.
Speaking of the jump Justin Timberlake, I remember I saw all week long the billboard, and I'm like, "There's no way!" And then, now that and then we ran into folks Friday night that had went to the show, and I'm like,
Okay.
I said, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." I said, "I guess if I gave it much thought, I would have left the guys behind." I'm like, "All right, free show with Justin Timberlake, man. What the hell?
Is that
He's a
what it
good."
was? Was it a free show?
Yeah, apparently I don't remember why he did it. Maybe it was something he was just trying to get
Well,
ready to go on.
he's a Memphis guy. That's his home.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So he's a member. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah. So
I mean,
apparently, yeah, we ran.
I don't know this is his current home, but that's where he's from.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was an interesting. Yeah. So, yeah. So you went through many rounds, got to Nashville or Memphis, and then as we were talking about, we've watch you guys play also at Alfred's. For those first two nights, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and then I think you guys still played at Alfred's, right? You guys pretty much stayed in the
Well,
same.
no, actually, we only did Alfred's once on Friday. So Wednesday and Thursday we were up the street at Club 152, and that
That's where we
was
saw you guys. I think we bounced around a little bit. I think that's what it was.
okay.
That's right.
Yeah, we were up there, which I understand. Never having gone to the event before, I didn't really know what was up. But BB King's is closed for renovations, which was across the street and like one storefront up from 152. So that club 152 kind of took on what I think the acts that would have been at BB's.
The main.
And I guess, but Alfred's was a cool room too.
Yeah.
So to me, it was no different. They were both pretty cool. Um, but yeah, so we did Wednesday, Thursday there, and then the Friday slot was at Alfred's.
Okay.
And man, I want to shout out that gal you're with. I don't know if that was like your wife or somebody's wife or girlfriend or something, but she was a grooving machine. With your little crew over there where you were hanging, like
Yeah. So you saw, yeah.
you know what I'm talking about? I
So
said
yeah.
that to her that night. I thanked her. I was like, "Thanks for that energy," because she was on, man.
Well, she will love to hear you say that, Dave. Yeah. So big shout out to Tracy. That's Kevin's
Tracy.
girl. So yeah. So
Okay.
Kevin's girl there. Yeah.
Well,
And
as you
Kevin was.
probably know, playing drums, like that's the whole thing for me. Like when I'm playing the gig, I am looking for the people that are tapping toes, bobbing
Yep.
heads, dancing,
Yep.
moving in their chairs, whatever. Like because I feed off of that energy. I'm trying to give that to them, and they're giving it to me. And so yeah, she had that in spades, and that was great.
She was totally. The irony was afterwards we went and walked up Bill Street and we were doing, like I said, our thing. We were trying to ask random people in the street, Kevin and I. It's like, hey, what makes the song? Is it riff or the rhythm? And again,
Uh,
now she's dating or whatever. I don't know how to describe that relationship, but they're together, and so of course she's going to say rhythms or riffs, obviously, because she's dating Kevin or whatever.
yeah.
But I'm like, you know what? I think secretly it's the rhythms, So I told her,
She
we
knows
called
it
it.
is. Tracy, you know. Come on.
Oh, no, Kevin's gonna kill me. So yeah, but no, he was totally stoked when I told him. I said, I've got Dave from Piper and Hard Times coming on the podcast, and he goes, dude, that's awesome. And that whole week, I think they picked up the CD. He picked up the CD somewhere along the line. Maybe it was early in the week,
Okay.
or maybe you guys are
Okay.
at 152. And every time we were going from the house to the, because we did an Airbnb. We're going from the
Yeah.
house to
Yeah.
the down to Beale Street. You had the CD was in the car, right? And we're like, damn, these guys are fucking tight, and the energy and everything that went with it. So it's not a surprise, I guess, to us, Dave. It's not a surprise that you guys won, right? So We
Well,
were
thank
not
you. Yeah, thank you. There was some people that said that, and I guess when you're on the inside of something, you don't know exactly what it looks like on the outside. It's hard to have a real good perspective.
right.
But the one thing that we've been talking about this amongst the band members since then is that we are so fortunate to be in this city where there's just so many great players. It's just insane. And so, it's a whole different thing than if you're coming from a smaller market and you're at the top of that heap. Um, that's awesome. And
Mhm,
that's a thing. But in Nashville, you just know you're never going to be at the top of that heap because those men and women that play on that level and have the history and the career, it's just bananas. And w- without fail, those people are incredibly humble, and
mhm,
they know that they're just lucky to be doing what they love to do in a city it's that kind of thing. And so everyone in the band plays well, and we're lucky that we're in an environment where you get to do that and be around people that play well. And so it just kind of gives you a natural leg up, I think, in a lot of ways. um,
yeah,
some sort of advantage, just based on the pool that we swim in here. It's just how it is.
right. Yeah. No, everything was, from I said, Al, and you and, I was even talking to your sax guy that came off, and I'm like, "Man,"
Yeah,
I says,
Teddy.
you got a lot of women here that, the way use your mouth, I'm sure a lot of women up there were, like, hoping that as
Oh,
well, my
well,
wife was going
Teddy just got engaged, so
yeah,
so yeah,
yeah,
he's he's probably not looking for
yeah.
all that. But
Even to me, it was a politically correct answer not to get himself in trouble.
yeah, yeah. No,
That's
all
funny.
great guys, and Amy, our keys player, wonderful people. And look, obviously it goes without saying. You saw the band. You can have a great band all day, great players all day. It doesn't really matter all that much if your singer, your front person, does not have that thing. And Piper has that X factor, in spades. I've played a lot of gigs with that guy. For on and off for years. And I have, and I'm not just saying this, I have literally never, ever, ever seen a gig where he doesn't take whoever's there, if it's 18 people or a packed room or whatever, and just have them in it and loving it. That's his gift. He can do that. And so it just never fails. So it makes it easy. We just go play, and he does his thing, and it just works.
Yeah, yeah, you could definitely tell you guys were very tight, and I think there's, maybe some bands that weren't necessarily as well gelled, and I know that some things that were kind of judged upon, how the band kind of interact or how it felt, and you guys have already been, together for many years, as you mentioned, and but yeah, no, it was like I said, I totally enjoyed it. It was, getting great seeing you guys, and then, oh, so back to 152. Somebody told me this. I don't know if you know that, but in Club 152 was the original place where Jerry Lee Lewis played.
Oh, no, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah,
That's
so I was
rad.
like,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's the history, and just like the whole, and then again afterwards, it was like, oh yeah, I told my wife, I said, yeah, we're here in Beale. She goes, oh, what's it like? And oh, the store. Again, I Google. I says, oh, by the way, the Elvis movie was not filmed in Memphis. It was filmed in Australia. I said, so all
Mm.
this we see here was supposed to be portrayed many years ago. Was not even it wasn't. This is not even. It was so
Wasn't even a thing. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, right.
yeah.
Because there was like, yeah, BB King's in the corner, which is like in the movie, right? And it was like, "No,
I
none of
I
this is."
haven't seen the film, so
Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah, I've been remiss in not seeing it, but I that's one of the things I need to put on my list for sure. But I'll tell you the
Yeah.
thing, I didn't get to do nearly as much touristing in Memphis as I wanted to.
Mm.
One, for time, and two, for the fact that a lot of stuff was closed, due to the weather. And
Right,
and
yeah.
uh, we had that sort of second wave that came in,
Mhm.
and that kind of, I think a lot of those business were like, forget it, man, we're not going to work,
Yeah.
can't get there. But the thing that tripped me out, I didn't get to tour it, unfortunately, but it was right by our Airbnb. Airbnb was like 2 blocks away, was Lorraine Motel, which is now the Civil Rights Museum. And
Oh,
we one evening, Parker, the bass player, and I walked to dinner, which was a few blocks away, and and it was kind of obscured by new construction and stuff, but you could see that pink motel through the chain link fence, and that kind of tripped me out, man. It kind of took me aback, and I was like, wow, okay, that's legendary. That in
Yeah.
the worst way, obviously, But I need to go back and do do a tourist trip to Memphis because I didn't get to do the things that I wanted to do.
Yeah, we're gonna go back when it's nice in the summer where it's really hot. And we're like, man, remember when it was freezing?
Oh yeah, believe me, it's well, you Florida, it's plenty hot here in the
Yeah.
summer. We don't
Oh
have that
yeah, yeah,
problem.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, but yeah, BB King's was closed, like you said, and that was kind of like, oh, okay. Well, I know there's other BB Kings in Nashville and other places too, but yeah, it was such a
yeah. I
like
had
a
actually played there once before some years ago.
okay.
I had one of the few times because I had played Memphis a handful of times, not a lot, but I think it was like 3 or 4 times. And one of them was a set at BB's with
Mm,
a young artist that a producer here was developing, and that was fun. Cool gig,
cool.
early
So
evening.
So for those that are the drummers that are listening to this, and maybe some are different, pros and do kind of go through experience these kinds of things, but so describe what it was like, having to, and again playing Nashville, this on Broadway as we talked about. And I know you don't do that, but it's pretty common. But playing on another kit, right? And playing on not your normal, and yeah, kind of what were some of the things that you kind of had to kind of get used to, or was there any kind of like, oh shit, or you know,
Yeah, good question. There was definitely a lot of times in earlier in my life when that was the case. It's like, oh gosh, growing up in Jersey, and a lot of the early gigs that I did and my band did was in New York, and a lot of times you're on house kits there, and so that was my first introduction to that. And I guess probably it was maybe the best place in the world to have to do that because when you would turn sets in New York, you had like 10 minutes, uh, and if you took longer, you were basically eating into your set time. It wasn't like they were going to wait until you were ready and then get your 45 minutes. If it took the band 20 minutes, 25 minutes to get going, you were down to 30 or 25 to play or whatever. So I
right.
got used to doing stuff really fast. I'm not super specific about gear. Like I don't really care all that much about certain things. Um, there's certain things that are important to me. So I guess to answer your question, uh, I now, especially being older, I always bring my throne. I have a nitro throne that I bring because I found more than anything else, you can run into a scenario where it's really hard to play if the throne is too high and won't go down, too low and won't go up, too wobbly. It's
Mhm.
a nightmare. Or if you're going to be on it for a while, is my back going to be a disaster tomorrow because of those, that 90 minutes I spent on it, or with 45 or whatever. So to me, if I have my throne, that's where I start. It's nice to have my cymbals. I like the way my cymbals sound, and I prefer to have them. It's cymbals are kind of a thing where they sound how they sound. You can't tune them, and so if you're on crap cymbals or cymbals that just don't appeal to you, it makes it difficult. And then obviously snare drum is nice too. So, but from the rest of it from there, man, it's like I don't really care. Like bass drums go boom and toms go doom doom, and if I can get a few minutes to tweak them and tune them, I will. I didn't have that luxury in Memphis. It was really fast.
Mhm.
At the Saturday gig we did, and they had a nice Yamaha kit at the theater, and they told us when they were doing like the orientation thing for how the show was going to run, that we weren't on a clock, to do what we needed to do to get comfortable. They gave us a few minutes to dial in monitors, which was great. Excuse me. And there was a drum tech for the show too, and I don't remember that guy's name, but I would shout him out because he was super pro and really helpful, and so that helped it go at the theater show. But for young drummers out there and who need to like make quick changes and stuff, don't get too hung up on it. Learn how to adapt. If you can't
Mhm.
reach the rack tom because it's at some goofy angle, don't play it. If the crash over here sounds like garbage, don't hit it. I mean, it's like you know what I mean. Just be adaptive and work around stuff. If you get hung up in your gear and that kind of thing, it's
Cool.
going to be, yeah, it's going to be prohibitive. Yeah, yeah.
Again,
Sometimes
you
it's
got an
hard though, man. I mean, sometimes things happen that are genuinely hard. Like for example, the first night at 152, Steve, our guitar player, we knew we was going to no sound check, no monitors, no nothing, right? A good throw and go. And so Steve wanted to make sure that Piper was going to be able to do his best. And what that means for any singer is they can hear themselves.
Mhm.
And if they can't hear themselves, they're going to have a miserable time. They're going to be pitchy potentially, and it's going to sound like garbage. So Steve told the engineer, just please make Piper's vocal hot. That's what the only thing that we really need to make sure it happens. Well, I'll tell you what, it was hot, and the drum monitor was behind me, and it was absolutely taking my head off with his vocal. That kind of stuff can be tricky. So, but you adapt. So what I did was, when I got a quick break between song 1 and 2, I had my snare bag there, and I just took the snare bag and threw it over the wedge and took the level down. And so,
Mm.
things like that you just figure out on the fly. And that kind of stuff happens at all levels, man. You would think as you're when you're playing, better venues and shows and stuff, sometimes it's still terrible. Sometimes your monitor mix is still awful, or it's
Right.
just it's part of it.
Yeah, that's a good tip there, right? Is a yeah, don't panic, right? And
Right.
or yeah, but like
Do
you said,
not.
your throne, right? I've got one, right? Those rock and sock, thrones that I've had for like ever, and still
Hmm.
holding up, and with the
Yeah.
backrest and everything, and
Oh, you got the
many years,
backrest. Yeah. Yeah. I like
yeah,
I like the simple, man. I like the round seat. I did the bicycle seat for a minute, but it was kind of like cutting off circulation in my thighs or something, and I was like having some weird like numbness in my legs. And I was like, I think it's this bicycle seat. So I went back to the round, and I'm good
mm,
on the round.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one thing, right? If it's again, it gets into your head and it kind of is like that little tick that you can't kind of like now you're just fixated on it. Now you're stressing and to remove whatever you can. And that's a good point. Is like whatever makes you the most comfortable, the least amount that you can do, something like that. If it's the throne, yeah, because thrones are very particular, right? For drummers and different sizes and or whatnot. Because you
Yeah,
can
and,
sit for
and
a
some
while, right?
sometimes it's just a level thing because they don't if they're real janky and they're like
Mm,
how drum hardware is on house kits, a lot of times it's all goofed up. So if you can't move that thing and now you're sitting like a full foot higher than you're comfortable sitting, that's hard because now
yeah,
you're in this weird
you're reaching.
position, or
Yeah.
yeah, or vice versa, you're down in a hole and you can't, that does make it difficult.
Or thrown that you start off high and then you've
Oh, it
got it
goes
tight
down
and
on
then
you.
it's
Yeah.
I was trying to think there was this one of the bands. Damn, what was it now? I'm trying to think. There was somebody had a snare kick drum. No, I think it was actually at the finals. Their kick drum was sliding out.
Oh, that's what I was going to say too. When you said the throne going down, that's where my head went. It was the creeping kick drum. Yeah, that can be
Hmm.
really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Absolutely.
think that happened. I think that happened at the finals actually, which is weird. And again, like I
So
said,
I'm like
how
pulling it back all the time, pulling it back, pulling it back.
enough that I know somebody came out and put something in front of the kick drum to I mean, since it was bougie, there at the theater, it wasn't like cinder block, so but
Yeah.
so it's cool. So all right, so Dave, I know you checked out a couple of the episodes here. So this is kind of the segment here in the show here. It's called a little bit of a rapid fire. We call it in
Okay.
4 beats or less.
4 beats or less. Okay. 1 bar. We got 1 bar.
Somebody else. I love it when somebody picks up on and say, "All right, what's the tempo?" Because that could
Yeah, I was gonna
mean
say, what's
so
my
many
tempo?
things.
I got 4 bars at 60. I got a minute on this, or what?
Right? Yeah,
Or four
it's
beats.
yeah, it's a 180 BPM, and there you go. So
All right, I got it. We're not thinking. We're just answering.
yeah, don't overthink it. Right here, it's first comes to your mind when I ask you. So here we go.
Okay.
In 4 beats or less, who's on your Mount Rushmore of drummers?
Oh, Steve Jordan, uh, John Bonham, Ringo Starr, and Jack DeJohnette.
Okay, all right, very good. So it's a couple
That's
names
four.
I haven't heard.
I,
Yep, you
I
got
got
it.
four.
You got it. So it's funny is I get asked that question too. Somebody has actually flipped it on me and said, "Well, it's my Mount Rushmore, so I can make it whatever I want." And I'm like, I guess if you want semantics, or I'll ask a drummer who's like not here in the U.S. and they don't get the reference. They're like, "What's Mount Rush?" I'm like, "Oh shit, I
Right. What
guess
does
I."
that even mean? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right, and I have to explain it. So all right, so number two, so in 4 beats or less, the favorite venue you've played at.
Oh, that's a hard question. Um, I can tell you it's probably not the biggest one for sure. Um, there's been a couple that stand out for different reasons. But I'm at a loss to pick a favorite. Yeah, sorry.
Can
For
you
me, I guess to answer the question, it's more about like the vibe of the place and the spirit and the sound. It's not about like, oh, it was so big. You know what I mean? I don't really
so
care about that.
so what do you, are you toy you know, torn between 2 places or a couple? Is that have
No,
you
there's like I've never been asked that question or never thought about it, so
okay,
I don't even like
okay.
know how to approach it because of my I mean, not to sound like I'm patting myself on the back or whatever, but I've played a lot of places. I've played a lot of
Mm,
gigs in a lot of different places, from senior centers to cool theaters, and so
yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know how to answer that. I don't have a
I
favorite.
you know, I guess I put it this way, you know, some people have said, you know, they've played at Red Rock and so forth, and
Yeah.
okay, I
Yeah,
get it, right.
that's a dream. I mean, that's a bucket list that I have not done. Like Radio City Music
Mm,
Hall would be a bucket list that I haven't done. I can tell you one that would certainly be in my top three, and that's the Bitter End on Bleecker
mm,
in Manhattan. And our dear friend Paul now owns that place and is keeping it going. And absolutely love the Bitter End. And I've gotten to play there a couple times since I moved to Nashville. I played there a lot when I was living in New Jersey. It's a legendary room, loads and loads of history and vibe, and it's got its own sound and its unique thing, and it's very intimate, and I love it there. So I can give you that one
okay.
for sure.
There you go. There you go. There you go. I got it out of you.
Yeah, yeah. Took a minute to figure that one out.
There you go. So, all right. So, question number 3: in 4 beats or less, what social media drummer are you following?
Oh, um, I follow a bunch. Um, I'm pretty bad at like keeping up with drummers on social media. Like here's why. From like I mentioned our business. So I'm the social media guy for our business. So a lot of times that I'm on social media, it's for Earth Dog. I have been very, very like bad and neglectful in a sense of developing my brand on social media. And so as a result, I tend to go on Facebook and talk to my friends and see what people I know are up to. I am not the guy that goes on like Instagram and and follows drummers and watches tons of clips. A, because of what I mentioned about time and necessity for my other business, and B, and this is the God's honest truth, I got real tired of seeing like 12-year-olds eating my lunch all day. And so I tended to just go, yeah, you know what, man?
Yeah.
Like I don't.
Uh,
This isn't doing me any my psych mental health
yeah.
any favors.
Right.
So
I'm
I've
gonna
kind of
just
shied
hang up the
away from it.
drumsticks.
Yeah, yeah. But I should say this. Another like sort of Mount Rushmore guy that's like a newer guy that I do see on social that is posting like just kind of random funny shit, and also his playing, which is brilliant, is Chris Dave. And Chris
Mm,
is just to me one of these I say younger guys. I think we're probably about the same age, but one of these next level guys is just absolutely blowing my mind every time I see him do anything. So
cool.
anytime a Chris clip comes up, I'm all in.
All right, fair. All right. So, question number 4: in 4 beats or less, what's the craziest thing that happened at a gig?
Oh wow. Um, I actually have an answer to that. It's not a good one, unfortunately, and it wasn't that long ago. It was last year at a gig we play here in town with Piper, and we saw a woman who I understand did not die, but it certainly looked like she died at the gig. Um,
Wow.
and yeah, and the paramedics obviously were rushed in, but the time that she left, and it was right by the stage, and we were a little closer to all that than we needed to be. It looked like she had passed. I understand that she did not, but I'd say that was probably the craziest thing. And I saw this woman. She looked what my perception was, and she was middle age to older, I'm guessing late 60s, not at the age that you would expect to
Mhm.
be checking out, right? She looked to me to be super drunk, and I don't think
Mm,
she was. I think she was something was starting to go on, and
mm,
you know how it is, man. The drum seat, you see everything. You see the whole
Yeah.
band,
Yep.
you see the whole room, you see the bartenders, you got the whole thing if you want to see it all. So I saw this woman, and she was not looking well, and I thought she was just drunk. And when she fell over, I thought she like had passed out, but she was having some serious health issue. And so
Wow.
I'd say that was probably the craziest thing I've ever seen. Not something you want to see, and not like the fun kind of story that we would probably would like to have. But that's
No, well,
probably it.
it's good. It's good to hear that, as far as that she was, didn't, but because I guess definitely it's, if somebody said you guys killed it, you, I guess literally,
Yeah,
that's
that's not
too
what you
soon. Is
want.
that too
It's
soon? Is
not what
that too
you
soon?
want. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to
No, it's
lose
all
your
right.
fans, right? You don't want to lose your audience. That's the whole part. You don't kill
Uh,
your fans.
yeah. Hey, and at the same time, I infamously said many years ago, became a kind of a joke in my old crew, that like people die. That's what they do. People die. And so,
Right.
not to be callous and cold, but it happens. It's gonna happen to all of us.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All right. Well, Dave, you made it through. You're now part of the alum there. So we're going to send
Ah.
you, get that shirt out to you. And I know I'm probably way behind on getting some shirts there. So again, where we say it's where the backbeats meets the spirits there. So thanks for kind of, playing along and having some fun with us there
Right
on
on.
that segment. So, but yeah, like I said, totally. I appreciate you coming on. I know, I kind of was trying to hit it, talk to all the drummers there the best I can, and appreciate you hitting me out there. You were the first and only one so far, definitely. And again, I'm like, of all the drummers that I needed should have on the show is the winner of the IBC, right?
Well, I'll be honest with you, man. Had we not won, I'm not sure I would have even reached out to you.
Okay.
And this is a maiden voyage for me on a podcast. I've never done a podcast before. So when we got home, and I was kind of going through a couple cards that I had gotten and stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, man, this guy, like, maybe I'll just do this. Like, why
Yeah,
not? And so,
yeah,
thanks
cool.
thanks for having me, man. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, and I guess last there, is what so far from when I know it's only less than a month, right? The challenge, leaving Memphis. Anything so far that's kind of parlayed into the with the band, opportunities or other gigs or
Man,
whatever?
yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely. And that's what I can look back and say, well, you know what? I was hesitant about doing this. I thought it was kind of a goofy thing to be doing, but it is bananas what is going on now. I mean,
Mm,
like, doors flying open. I mean, there's a booking package that we won that the winner gets. So we're going to be doing the Telluride Blues Festival. We're going to be doing the Big Blues Bender in Vegas, and we're going to be doing one of those blues cruises. I forget which one it is. That's in the prize package. Winning band, gets the slots on all those things. So that's there. But in addition, all of these chapters of blues societies have, not all of them, but lots of them have been coming forward and being of service, helping with bookings. A lot of venues have opened up. A lot of festival dates, offers coming in, and it's absolutely crazy. Like, we just got home, and it was like, man, you won the beauty pageant. It's like, you're the thing now. And so it's something we're trying to take advantage of and do our best with, to level up and establish this act as a viable touring act. Use this opportunity to establish a little spot for ourselves. And we're going to go make a record in 2 weeks. We'll be cutting a new record.
awesome. So
Yeah. So
is that exclusive? Did you drop an exclusive on me or
yeah, pretty much, yeah. Because
great?
we haven't even talked about it on our socials or anything yet. Because we've
Oh, there
just
you
been
go.
getting dates, and we got a great little team, a producer and an engineer that I've worked with, Trey Sasser and Joe Costa, who are wonderfully talented guys that I've done some other records with. And so we got a great little crew together, and this band is pretty lean and mean. We cut live, and we cut fast, and so we're looking forward to it, man. We're just gonna crank out a record. So probably by the summer, we're hoping early summer we'll have physical product and stuff to go to streaming, and stuff to promote,
Awesome.
and new music. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely keep let's keep connected, and especially when you guys do the blues cruise. I'm assuming it's going to go out of Florida. If that's going to go out of
Yeah, I
Florida,
think they leave from Lauderdale, pretty much.
yeah, definitely. Keep in touch with us. Definitely with Kevin. Maybe it's something again. While you guys are down there doing that, you can hit a couple places and sync up with Kevin and in the Blues Society
Well,
here.
actually,
And
that's yeah. Thanks for mentioning that because we are in conversations with the Blues Society down there. I think that's out of Central Florida, like the Orlando region, and
okay, yeah,
yeah, and they have a festival, and they've been sharing other venues and stuff. And we also
cool.
have a booker now. There's a woman that's been here in town, Jeannie Hughes, has been doing the blues scene for a long time, and so she's on the team now. And Gina knows kind of everybody everywhere in the blues scene, and so we're just trying to figure out how we can make these runs and how we make it all work, and get
Got
everybody fed and pay for the gas and get up the road.
right, yeah, for sure. So, all right, so Dave, as we wrap up here, what do you want people to go check out? I know you kind of said that some of your social media you got some things to work on, but here's the shameless plug. What's the
Oh yeah, yeah. So I do have some stuff. Well, first of all, piperinthehardtimes.com. That would be the one to check out. We've got links to music on there and dates and all the stuff. And then we've got our socials. We're Piper in the Hard Times on the socials, so you can find us on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. Piper in the Hard Times. And then personally, I'm Dave Colella, Colella, and I'm at Dave Colella on Instagram, and I'm Dave Colella on Facebook. And I was hoping to have my site launched. I've had this like long time in the works personal website, and when we got this thing scheduled, I was like, all right, that's it. I'm gonna hammer down. I'm gonna have my site done by the time we do this thing. And that didn't happen. So I'll have a personal site soon. But if anybody is in Nashville area and lessons, gigs, sessions, I'm here. Holler at me.
sounds good, man. So yeah, and also
Yeah,
don't forget about
thank you.
Earth Dog,
And
right?
Earth Dog, yeah. If we want to go the dog route, earthdog.com. Yeah, we got you covered.
Excellent. So Dave, I appreciate you coming on the podcast again. I said I'm so glad you reached out to me, and said we had a great time there in Memphis. Seeing you guys perform was awesome. Again,
Thank you, man.
meeting a fellow drummer, and definitely stay connected there. So appreciate everybody for tuning in this episode there on YouTube and Apple and all the other places the podcasts are available there. Make sure you give us a 5-star rating, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. We're trying to grow the channel. Hit the subscribe button on Apple
That's
and
how it
everything else.
works.
That we talk about, help and support other drummers. Just tag me on stuff and I'll reshare it. That simple. And yeah, we got some really good guests that are coming up here 2024. As Kevin said, we coined it. Kevin McLaughlin coined it and says 2024, the year of more. So I was like, that's great.
More and more.
So
Well, yeah. Well, so far, yeah, January has been a whole lot more. So
I
yes,
know. Yeah,
get
what are you guys gonna do for
get
February now, right? You got a lot to live up to.
right. Tough act to follow. Yeah, we're gonna make a record.
There you go. There you go. So,
Yeah, yeah.
all right. So, thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, check out all the social media stuff too. Again, you guys know what you need to do. The links are all in the bio. Then, Dave, I appreciate you coming on again to the podcast, and let's stay in touch and kind of see the progress there, and it's to know about the new album coming out and all the other cool stuff too. So, appreciate it. Thanks,
Sounds great.
Dave, for coming on.
Thank you so much, Paul.
All right.
Appreciate you, man.
This is Paul with the Backbeats Meets Spirits. Cheers, y'all.